You know, we spend a massive chunk of our lives at work, but have you ever really stopped to think about who actually designs the jobs we do? Today, we're diving into job design. It's like the invisible architecture that shapes our tasks, our motivation, and yeah, ultimately, how our work actually feels day to day.
So I want you to just take a second and think back. Ever had a job that just felt off? You know, one that left you feeling drained or confused or just mind-numbingly bored? Well, that feeling? It probably wasn't you. More than likely, it was the job itself. It was a problem of design.
So let's start by playing detective and figuring out the problem. Why do so many jobs out there feel fundamentally broken?
What's so powerful about this list is how familiar these symptoms probably are to a lot of us. That soul-crushing monotony, right, where you feel like you're just a cog in some giant uncaring machine. The confusion over who's supposed to do what. That sinking feeling that your work doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And burnout. And I'm not just talking about working hard, but that friction that comes from messy processes and constant handoffs. And here's the thing, these aren't personal failings. They are classic, textbook symptoms of poor job design.
But here's the really good news. If a job can be poorly designed, that means it can also be well designed. So let's flip this around and look at the blueprint for what makes a job truly great.
This is so important. Job design isn't something that just happens. It's intentional. It's the deliberate process of structuring a role to get the very best out of people. I love the analogy here. It's like being an architect for a role. You're carefully crafting how everything fits together, for humans, not just for machines.
And you know, this isn't just guesswork. Decades of research, like the famous job characteristics model, tell us that the best jobs are built from 5 core ingredients. These things tap right into our basic psychological needs. You've got skill variety, so you're not just doing one thing all day. Task identity, which means you get to own a piece of work from start to finish. Task significance, that's knowing why your work matters. Then there's autonomy, the freedom to make your own calls, and finally feedback, so you actually know if you're doing a good job. Put them all together, and you get a real sense of meaning and responsibility.
And wow, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? On the left, you have that job that just drains the life out of you. It's repetitive, it's fragmented, you're constantly micromanaged. And on the right, you have the job that actually energizes you. It's varied, it's purposeful, it's empowering. It's the same 5 building blocks we just talked about, but the difference is night and day. So take a look. Which of these columns feels a little too familiar?
Okay, so we know what a good job looks like, but how do companies actually build one? It's not magic, believe me. It's a structured, deliberate process.
Well, it turns out there's a pretty structured process, usually about 6 steps. It all starts with framing the problem. What are we actually trying to achieve here? Then you map out everything that needs to get done. From there, you get really specific about the roles, clarifying who's responsible for what. You know, that whole who does what chart. Then you test it out on a small scale, like a pilot program, before you roll it out to everyone. And this last one is so important. You have to measure everything. Not just performance, but also the human outcomes, like are people happier? Are they sticking around?
But here's a crucial point. There's no one-size-fits-all solution here. It is all about strategic trade-offs. If you need hyper-efficiency, yeah, the old assembly line approach works, but you risk killing motivation. If you want top-notch quality and a team that's always learning, socio-technical systems are great, but they can get complex. And for speed and innovation, Agile is fantastic, but you have to be careful you don't end up with a chaotic mess.
Okay, so at this point, you're probably thinking, right, this is an HR thing. But that's actually one of the biggest misconceptions out there. Great job design is a total team sport.
The truth is, it takes a village. Everybody has a role. Senior leaders have to back the change and make sure the incentives line up. HR builds the frameworks and the training. But you know who the real MVPs are? The line managers who make it happen on the ground, and, maybe most important of all, the employees themselves. They're the ones who actually know how the work gets done. You have to bring them in as co-designers. It's non-negotiable.
All right, enough theory. Let's make this real. We're going to look at some amazing, high-stakes examples of job design in the wild, both the good and the very, very bad.
First up, the legendary Toyota production system. This is an absolute masterclass. They have incredibly standardized processes, which gives them that amazing efficiency. But here's the stroke of genius. They give every single worker the autonomy, the power, to pull a cord and stop the entire assembly line if they see a problem. That's job design that builds quality and learning right into the DNA of the work.
Then you have companies like 3M and Google. famous for giving their engineers 15% time or 20% time. Think about that. They literally designed the job to include time for creative freedom and exploration. And what came out of it? World-changing innovations like the Post-it note. It's a perfect example of how designing for autonomy and skill variety isn't just a nice-to-have, it can lead to absolute game changers.
But job design has a dark side. When it goes wrong, it can go horribly wrong. The Wells Fargo scandal is just a brutal case study. The job for their bankers was designed with these incredibly powerful incentives to open new accounts. The problem, the metrics were completely disconnected from ethical behavior. And here's a hard truth. People will almost always figure out how to hit the metrics you put in front of them. In this case, the design of the job basically created a system that rewarded massive fraud.
Okay, so let's bring it all together. If you're going to remember anything, remember these 7 core principles for getting job design right. It has to connect to the big picture strategy. You have to be crystal clear on who decides what. You want to reduce friction and give people real feedback. You have to build in ways for people to learn and grow. Make sure it's inclusive. And, so important, you have to measure success in both hard numbers and human terms.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. Job design isn't just some corporate buzzword. It's the underlying code that runs our daily work experience. So I want to leave you with a question, a really personal one to think about. When you look at your own job through this lens, is it designed for you to thrive, or is it just a structure for you to survive?